Hello again. I'm really glad to meet you all here today. Today it is the World Day of the Refugees and Migrants, and I'm really glad to have our establishing meeting of our Scholars at Risk section in Bulgaria. You received from me all the invitations and the agenda, also some communication from Denise. And today we will be together in this meeting in order to see what are the details, opportunities, and responsibilities. So you have already the agenda, pretty much three presentations on introduction of the Scholars at Risk network, how the Scholars at Risk sections work, plus shared experience from SAR Greece. So each of these presentations will not be very long. The main focus of our today meeting is actually on the discussion and questions and answers sessions. So thank you very much for joining once again, and I will give now the floor to Miriam, that is actually a program assistant of the membership team at Scholars at Risk. Miriam incorporates new members into the network and supports existing members with SAR programming and activities. Miriam, the floor is yours. Please let me know if you need some help with the sharing. Maybe I have to make you co-host.
Yeah, thank you, Svetlana. Hello, everybody. So as she mentioned, I'll be giving a presentation just with an introduction to the Scholars at Risk network, and basically who we are and what we do. So Scholars at Risk, basically, rather than an organization, we think of ourselves as a network of universities and higher education institutions in the world. And the idea is that all of us share a common mission to promote academic freedom and protect threatened scholars. So it's a way of coming together to collaborate and do this. So currently, after over 2 decades, SAR is represented in over 600 institutions in more than 42 countries. And as part of these, we have something like national chapters, which we call sections, in 15 countries now. And Denise will talk to you a little bit more about that, since the focus of this meeting is, of course, establishing such a section in Bulgaria. But our general organizational framework is the sort of the first unit of organization is always the campus, the university itself. And in that effort, we feel it's always been wonderful to have a committee at a university, a group of people who are interested, who join SAR as member institutions and are able to promote academic freedom within their campus, as well as find ways to protect at-risk scholars from all around the world. So our work basically encompasses 3 major sections: protection, advocacy, and learning. The centerpiece of our work is our protection work, meaning the things that we do towards protecting scholars who are threatened either with violence or arrest or by conflict all around the world. And so how we do our protection work is basically, so far, we've been helping about more than 300 scholars every single year. This is primarily with providing them with sanctuary. So a way to continue their academic life, their research, their teaching in a place that is safe and secure for them to be. And so this is primarily through host institutions, universities such as yourselves, that would be able to host scholars from around the world. By the way, if you have any questions during this presentation, feel free to put it in the chat or ask me. So how this goes about, the sort of process, is that initially a scholar will apply with us. So a scholar from a country that they're facing some kind of risk will apply with us. And we do an initial evaluation. So in the initial evaluation, we first check to see whether the scholar fulfills the criteria of being a scholar. Ultimately, we're not a refugee agency, we are scholars at risk. So it is specifically for academics, right? After we establish that they are in fact a scholar and that they are in fact at risk, then we're able to look towards hosting. So in some countries, the sort of risk is very easy to determine. So in a conflict zone, such as now with Ukraine, we know immediately that any person who applies from there would qualify as being at risk. But in other situations, it's a little bit more of a gray area, and we have to sort of corroborate their story with media or other things like that. The SAR evaluation process is extremely extensive. So we go through background checks, plagiarism checks, everything that is needed for a university to be comfortable and secure with hosting a scholar. So it's a very intensive vetting process. It does take a lot of months. But the good thing about it is that once you are hosting a scholar, you know that this person is going to be a suitable candidate for your university. So this is the point where we go towards hosting. And this is where, with the support of member institutions, higher education institutions, we provide a placement. The institution provides a placement at their university, usually from 6 months to 2 years, for this scholar to continue their academic work. And SAR is unable to provide funding. So SAR does not provide the money for these placements. Those come from the institution themselves, either from central administration or from some kind of national fund. But what SAR does do is help with the transition. So it supports scholars with networking, assistance for relocation, travel, integration adjustment, helping them with job skills, language skills, things like that, in collaboration with the specific campus. And then, of course, you finally have the actual transition where the scholar moves out of that placement. And this is something that SAR uniquely does. So scholars at risk stays with the at-risk scholar throughout their period of need. That means that if a scholar has spent 1 year at a university in Bulgaria, for instance, but they still need sanctuary after that, they're not ready to go home and the situation is not safe, then scholars at risk will help them find another placement at another university, maybe in Bulgaria or in an entirely different country. So that's one thing that we uniquely do, is that the scholar doesn't have to reapply with us. They are already an at-risk scholar according to our criteria. So we work with the host campus to make sure that they're not left high and dry at the end of a placement, and that the campus also has our support to help them find another placement. Any questions so far about that process? Does that make sense? Okay, great. So in terms of, from a university point of view, right, how does a university go about hosting a scholar through SAR? The first step is that a university looks into their departments. They see where is a placement available, right? So if they decide, for example, we have a position in the political science department, then what a university could do is go to our website. We have a list of scholars who are seeking positions. I think Denise has put the link in the chat. So you can go through that list and see, is there anyone who sort of meets your criteria, right? Is there anyone whose field is also in political science, who is studying similar things, who meets the criteria? And you can contact us about that person. Now, the list on the website is not complete because there's a lot of scholars who are in the process of being evaluated and are nearly done, but they're not yet on the website. So if you don't see anybody who is of interest to you on the website, you can reach out to us directly, and our protection team will be able to match you with someone who is a suitable candidate. So after you decide on someone who is a potential candidate, we provide you with what's a scholar packet. A scholar packet has their resume, publication details, all the information you need to know whether this person is suitable for your university or not. And after that, you usually have a Skype interview with the scholar. This doesn't always happen because there are some situations where it's not it's a security concern to have a virtual interview. So in those situations, there's other ways, you can ask us some questions, we'll contact the scholar directly. There are some ways to get around that, but most of the time, the university will be able to speak to the scholar face-to-face before they accept the scholar and provide an offer, which is like the third step that a university does, where they provide an offer explaining what the role is, explaining what the department is, the expectations, as well as the stipend or the salary that the scholar will have. So that's sort of what encompasses our protection work. Does anybody have questions about anything in the protection aspect? We can also come to this later, but in the meantime.
No raised hand, so.
Okay, great. So Scholars at Risk for decades was doing this protection work. And we started to basically think that while it is important to protect scholars who are, extremely threatened, we also realized that there are many countries where there are signs of an increasingly repressive situation for academic freedom, and that we also have to do a lot of work to make sure that these situations don't arise in the first place. And that's when we started to expand out of protection and also look into advocacy and learning. So other ways to make sure that countries never get to the situation where scholars are fleeing in the first place, right? And so as part of our academic work, advocacy work, what we basically do is monitor attacks on academic freedom throughout the world and advocate at international levels, local levels, at multiple levels for imprisoned scholars or other scholars who are at risk. We also support, students in this regard. Scholars at risk for the protection element, we don't provide sanctuary for students, but we do support students who are being suppressed by in various countries through the advocacy efforts. And this all kind of falls under an umbrella project called the Academic Freedom Monitoring Project, which is a year-long project where we monitor and document attacks on academic freedom throughout the world. And this is a project that culminates in an annual report, which, Denise, if you could put that in the chat. This report is called the Free to Think report. So the Free to Think report is an annual report that documents attacks on academic freedom in over 65 countries, at least as of 2021. And this includes, threats, it includes violence, it includes wrongful imprisonment. More recently, it's included COVID-related issues as well. We've noticed an increased suppression on the rights of scholars and students alike through the sort of excuse of COVID. And so this kind of documentation throughout the year with partners all over the world is how we're able to identify key areas of focus. And it's in these key areas of focus that we have a sort of intensive advocacy campaigns. Specifically, we do something called the Scholars in Prison Project. The Scholars in Prison Project is basically looks at scholars who are not able to make it out of the country, who are in detention or who have been wrongfully imprisoned, and advocates on their behalf. So we coordinate with family members, we coordinate with their lawyers to advocate for them on an international level or on a regional level. And also a sort of really wonderful project that came out of this is called the Student Advocacy Seminars. The Student Advocacy Seminars are basically usually undergraduate seminars led by a faculty member where students conduct research. They choose a specific case study, usually, of a scholar who is in prison. They do research on this case and they put together campaigns to advocate for the release of these scholars, right? So it can be social media campaigns, it can be advocating with members of parliament or with EU members. And so you have this nice way where students learn the sort of ins and outs of how to run a campaign, which is very useful not only for supporting scholars who are at risk, but for any other sort of human rights cause that they might start to get interested in later on in life. So it's a nice way of supporting a scholar who is in prison, but also teaching undergraduates about how to run such a campaign and instilling principles of academic freedom at a sort of, relatively young age and an important point in life. And this has had some really nice outcomes. So in one instance, it's quite rare that a scholar does actually get released from prison, unfortunately, but there have been instances like in Jie Wang, who was able to return and actually spoke to some of the students who did the student advocacy seminars on his behalf. So there's a nice connection with these scholars that's very hands-on, in some instances where students have contact with family members of the scholar. And so it's very hands-on, and it provides a lot of really good experience for undergrads in this way. Okay. We also do something called the Academic Freedom Legal Clinics, which is more for law students. So the student advocacy seminars usually is for undergraduates. It's not, restricted, but typically universities do it for undergraduates. The Academic Freedom Legal Clinics is sort of more technical, it's more legal, and it's for law students who do a legal analysis of various scholars who are in prison. And these reports, this kind of monitoring and legal analysis reports, are also used in our universal periodic review that we submit to the United Nations. So the United Nations that asks for our input as to the situation of human rights in various countries. So we provide that sort of academic perspective on that. And the legal clinics help support us with that regard. So that's how we're able to advocate on a sort of UN level to promote academic freedom in a country that is having sustained threats. Okay, any questions on the advocacy element before I get into the learning part? Yeah, go ahead.
Are the seminars and the legal clinics open just for students from member institutions, or are they open for students from any institution?
So with the student advocacy seminar, we do have someone who works with SAR who provides support in like creating the curriculum and things like that. So to my knowledge, we've only ever had member institutions do student advocacy seminars. But, our lines are kind of blurred. So even hosting, we've had non-member institutions who have hosted scholars before. So I wouldn't say it's strict, but I can't think of an example in the past where we've had a student advocacy seminar by a non-member. But yeah, if anybody else wants to jump in about that.
I would just say, Miriam, I think you're exactly, sorry if you're asking for colleagues that, potentially a non-member, and Denise might jump in as well, could say we're very interested, and that might be a really tangible entry point for further engagement with the network. So it wouldn't necessarily be that membership would have to come first in that regard. It could be a collaboration on the seminar that leads to further collaboration, just as you said.
Yes, you'll find that we're very flexible when it comes to engagement with institutions. Of course, most of our engagement is based with our membership, but it's not limited to that.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, any other questions on advocacy? Okay, so in terms of learning, so SAR's like dream learning situation would be to have every higher education institution ensure that there is some kind of a class or a course that all undergraduate students take on the principles of higher education, on the importance of academic freedom. The idea being that even in countries where we generally think there is broadly academic freedom, and it's not a situation where people are being arrested every day or anything like that, even in those situations, it's very important to promote academic freedom and to make sure that it doesn't turn into a situation like that. So a sort of dream project would be to have classes like this at every single university. And of course, we're not there yet. So the ways that we have sort of worked towards creating that learning and research environment is hosting workshops and conferences and events like that, but also importantly, offering an online course And this online course, I think there's over 5,000 people have taken it now. And it's basically a course about academic freedom, principles of academic freedom, and threats and how to combat those threats and things like that. So broadly, the way we structure these learning goals is through what we call the promoting higher education values. And these are what we consider to be those higher education values. So academic freedom is, one aspect of that, but it's also equally important to have, equitable access, to make sure that institutions are independent and autonomous and have the freedom to, publish what they want, say what they want, things like that. And one way we do this is we have like a curriculum, a basically discussion guide on promoting higher education values. And these discussion guides are used in workshops and conferences that universities might do, not even necessarily for students. It might be something at the level of administration or faculty, or just a general conference at all levels of the university. And we found it's a good curriculum and it's a good sort of guide to start steering these conversations and to begin having these conversations in the higher education space overall. We also do something called the Scholar Speaker Series, which is scholars who have been at risk, who feel secure enough to speak in public. I think, Denise, if you could share the list of available scholars on the chat, and where universities can invite these scholars to speak at their institutions, to talk about their story, to talk about academic freedom in general and its importance. So it's basically a series of publicly available lectures. And this is also a nice way to collaborate with other universities, because if there's more than one university in a town, then it's a very easy way to have a speaker who can attend lectures at both universities, for instance, or invite people from the entire, from the higher education space in the entire city to be able to attend a speaker series like this. So this is also a nice way to get, again, very in touch with at-risk scholars who are directly facing threats, to their life or to their work. This is also something where SAR is able to support financially to a limited extent. So we provide the honorarium for speaker series like this, while the other costs are, of course, handled by the institution. But again, in the world of COVID, I mean, you don't really have transport and stuff as of late, but if hypothetically people were to invite the scholars in person, that would be handled by the institution. So yeah, those are some of the projects that we work on. This is not, all encompassing. There's a lot of other stuff that goes on, but this is just to give you a brief introduction to the various elements of work that we do, just so that if anything in particular strikes you as important for your campus specifically, we can work on that. So there's lots of institutions who join our network who are not able to host scholars, right? Who don't host scholars, but they do a lot of advocacy work. They have a lot of student advocacy seminars. And so there's other ways to be involved in the network as well. And we're happy to support with that. So Denise has put the network form in the chat. That's, how to join the network. You can also just reach out to any of us directly. We do typically have a membership contribution. So usually the amount of money that reflects our the work that we do is $5,000, but we never want finances to be a barrier. So lots of institutions pay $1,000 if they can't afford to, but many institutions say, we can't afford to pay at all, and that's completely fine. We provide a waiver for institutions that can't afford to pay the contribution fee. But just so you know that is sort of how we fund ourselves. Yeah. Any other questions about? Yeah, go ahead.
I guess me. Hello, my name is Eva, and I work in the UNHCR office in Sofia in Bulgaria. And first, congratulations to Sofia University for their great choice to become part of your network. And I'm really glad that they have decided to do so, because to a large extent from what I heard from your presentation, the protection part is related to what we call here complementary pathways, or options to leave a country where your life is threatened through a legal way. So my question was related, usually we have advocated for that in Bulgaria for a long time, but the problem that comes usually is the lack of interest on the part of the state to allow these people to arrive, to issue the relevant documents, visas. So is your network able to somehow, do you have experience, and are you able to assist in this process? That's my first question. Also, I saw that the people that would be interested to be included in the list would usually apply themselves, but it is possible to be a referral. So who can make this referral? And then maybe just not to take the floor again, just to mention that this week, UNHCR and Sofia University are signing an official contract for setting up legal clinics on refugee law. So it would be great if we can actually use this infrastructure for such kind of seminars and discussions. I think it is a great coincidence. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So in terms of documentation, typically the university coordinates things like visas and documents, because of course you have to provide an offer, and then the visa is contingent on getting an offer from the university, right? So usually it's the international office at any university that handles that. The one way that we can help is that because we work with many universities in doing this, there's a bit of experience about what works, what doesn't, the sort of unique obstacles in certain countries. So we're happy to provide like tips and tricks, but ultimately the visa process is handled by the university. Yeah, I hope that, and of course, so exciting news about the legal clinics. Definitely, I think that's something we can coordinate and help out with. Yeah, does anybody else want to add to that? Those questions.
Miriam, I might just affirm everything you said, and to say that one of the benefits, I think, of the national sections, particularly on visas, has been that there has been occasionally those pathways and communication lines that have been open to various government ministries, which can help to push forward those processes. And we saw that a bit in regard to response to Afghanistan within some country contexts, where the individual university, of course, has, and as you state, is responsible for those processes because it's a labor mobility pathway in most cases, as you were saying, Eva, but that the national sections would come together and say, collectively, we're pushing for more spaces for at-risk scholars. And that carried a greater impact because those universities are speaking together in unified fashion. So that's a helpful way just to say that we have these core units, but those national sections, which you've referred to, also help on the visa questions too. And that the referrals, that's an open link. So sometimes when a scholar is unable to make that referral himself or herself, they might have a trusted colleague who's able to do that on their behalf. I think there was that specific point as well.
Thank you very much. If there are any further questions, maybe we should move to the next session, that is describing of how Scholars at Risk section is built and how it works. So with a few words to present you the speaker, Denise is the advocacy manager at Scholars at Risk Europe. She leads the advocacy work to promote academic freedom, including coordinating the activities of the European Coordinating Committee for Academic Freedom Advocacy. Denise, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. And thank you, Svetlana and Sofia University for facilitating this meeting today and providing SAR with the opportunity to speak with everyone here today about establishing a Scholars at Risk section in Bulgaria. So as mentioned, I'm the Advocacy Manager with SAR Europe, and we're the European office of the Global Network, and we're based in Maynooth University in Ireland. So SAR Europe was launched in 2018, and following nearly 20 years of partnership between European higher education institutions and Scholars at Risk, our branch was launched. So in Europe, the network comprises of over 360 institutions in around 27 European countries, and we're continuing, of course, to grow. So SAR Europe has three main tasks. We support and coordinate the activities of the 13 SAR sections and 10 partner networks that are based in Europe. But we also coordinate Inspire Europe, and you would have heard earlier from my colleague Joel Hanasik, who leads that project, and he's also here to answer any questions you might have in respect of it. So this is an EU-funded project which brings together 10 partners across Europe to coordinate activities in support of researchers at risk, and which has recently been renewed for a further 3 years. And finally, we also work to expand, coordinate, and support advocacy in Europe to promote academic freedom, including by convening the European Coordinating Committee for Academic Freedom Advocacy. So for today's purposes, I'm just going to focus rather briefly on sections, what they look like, and how they can be structured. But if you'd like to learn more about Inspire or our advocacy work, please do reach out, and I'll share my contact details in the Zoom chat. Also, in the interest of time, I would kindly ask attendees if you would please hold your questions until after Alejandro speaks, because he's here to offer the practical and personal perspective on what forming and running a section actually looks like. And so he'll probably be, and what he imparts may answer many of your questions. So what is a Scholars at Risk section? Well, as Miriam mentioned earlier, SAR is represented by over 600 institutions across 42 countries. And what we have found is that as our membership has grown, we're increasingly seeing and encouraging our members to organize themselves into groups, what we call sections. And these sections lead and coordinate SAR-related activities within their own region. So this could be like our SAR Flanders in Belgium, or country like SAR Greece or SAR Italy. And SAR currently has sections across, I think Miriam said 15 countries, and 13 of which are based in Europe. So the benefits really of forming these sections, well, over the years, we've distilled them to about 6 benefits. So the first one, and I think this is really important one, is really all around the pooling of resources. Because many of our institutions want to get involved in our activities, they want to host scholars, but what they find is they don't have the funding to do so. So many of our institutions are actually coming together and pooling their resources. So in order to host a scholar, 3 institutions might come together. So one might provide the lab or the facilities, another may provide accommodation, while a third may provide the stipend. Or indeed, other institutions will all come together and produce a funding application together. So rather than each individual institution competing against each other for funding, they're all coming together and joining in the pursuit of that funding. The next really important benefit is really the sharing of expertise. And this really did come up earlier when you're talking about dealing with obstacles on a national front. So this section comes together and they're able to share the knowledge they have gained about the practical aspects of dealing with hosting scholars, or the practical aspects they have encountered with dealing with administrative bodies within your own country. The third, of course, is they function as a support network. This is especially so for those institutions that are undertaking hosting, but of course that there's no obligation to do so. The sections act as a means of support, not just for the scholars they're hosting, but also for each other. The fourth, and this is a really important one, is that collectively, the section can build a stronger voice when it comes to advocating on a range of issues relating to academic freedom, or again, on practical matters, like the changes that need to happen in relation to visas or immigration policies within your country. And then the fifth is very important because establishing a section would also mean that Bulgaria could nominate a representative to SAR's International Advisory Committee. So all our sections are invited to do so. And the purpose of this committee is to further embed international perspective into SAR's structure and governance, and to provide a forum and communication channel for SAR section, partner networks, staff and board. And so it's through this participation in the committee that sections can also share invitations, expertise, and ideas across countries across the global network. And it meets about 3 or 4 times a year, usually online. And finally, and rather importantly, forming a group of like-minded and committed institutions will increase the likelihood of the sustainability of this initiative and this work in your country. I will also add, actually, in Europe, there is an additional benefit, as sections can nominate a representative to our advocacy committee. So as mentioned earlier, this works towards greater integration of academic freedom within Europe's higher education, research and human rights systems. And this offers the section the opportunity to engage more fully in SAR's advocacy work in Europe. And it is also an opportunity to connect more regularly on these issues with our other European sections. So just to briefly say how these sections are actually structured. Well, as I said earlier, we're very flexible, but there are generally 3 types of structures. So partnering with an NGO, a national secretariat, or establishing a steering committee and chair. So I'll just begin with the least common, and this one really would be partnering with an NGO. And the reason why this is the least common is that we are seeking to partner with organizations that have a strong history of supporting threatened and/or refugee academics and students. And there are just very few organizations that have this type of remit. So for example, in the United Kingdom, SAR is very fortunate to partner with the Council for Assisting At-Risk Academics, more commonly known as CARA. And it is a charitable organization dedicated to assisting academics in immediate danger. And about 65% of UK higher education institutions are actively engaged in its work. So it was very much a natural partner for SAR in the United Kingdom. The second type of structure involves establishing a national secretariat. So this means identifying and partnering with an existing network or organization with a national level higher education remit. So in Germany, this was the Alexander von Humboldt Foundation. In Finland, this was the Finnish Rectors Conference. And in Ireland, this was Universities Ireland. So all have the benefit of an existing network that provided the structure within which the institutions already cooperated on a wide range of issues relating to higher education policy, making them a really welcome fit for supporting SAR's program. And the secretariat is usually a fixed role that anchors the section, but it can be also supported by a steering committee and chair that is directly elected by the membership of the section. And this brings us to our most common structure. So this is the steering committee and chair. And here sometimes a member institution such as Aristotle University in Greece will act as a chair or a coordinator of the section, usually on a rotation basis. And in Italy, this role is shared between 2 universities, Trento and Padova. And they serve as a central contact point or hub for the section, and they work with the elected steering committee to lead the section. So really, just to summarize, essentially the purpose of forming a Bulgarian section would be to coordinate activities within Bulgaria to protect and support threatened and refugee scholars and to promote academic freedom. And the section would include all SAR members, affiliate members, and partner networks in Bulgaria. But crucially, participation in any specific activity is not a requirement for involvement in the section, and it will be at the complete discretion of each member institution. It is also up to the individual section to decide on the level of activity to pursue and how to prioritize their time. So if you would like to form a SAR section in Bulgaria, the first step would be to join Sofia University and become a member of SAR. And then once we have a core number of members in Bulgaria, usually around 3 to 5, we can then move forward with forming the section and formalizing the structure. I should add that we've been working very closely with Sofia University in this last few weeks, and they have kindly offered to act as that coordinator and take on that convening role should you wish to move forward with the building of the section. I should add just that this relationship is usually governed by an agreement, which is known as a memorandum of understanding. And this agreement would be between SAR and the new coordinator. And it would just really set out the structure of the section and the roles and the responsibilities of the parties. So should you choose to form a section, we will work with you on that. And it is up then to you to decide what kind of activities you would like to get involved in once you've formed that section. In closing, I would like to thank you all very much for the opportunity for speaking to you today about this. And we are delighted to explore the possibility of forming a Scholars at Risk section in Bulgaria. Thank you for your interest.
Thank you very much, Denise. Please either raise your hand or type your question in the chat. It's possible both ways. If some of you find these presentations interesting and want to consider further participation, we can also discuss after the meeting today and have a separate chat on the opportunities and how to be involved, of course. And we are available at Sofia University to anyone who would like to have this separate discussion. Okay, for now, I don't see any hands raised nor any questions typed in the chat. And I'm glad now to present our next speaker, Alexandros Triandafilidis from Scholars at Risk Greece. Alexandros is a professor at School of Biology, Aristotle University of Thessaloniki. He is biologist with PhD studies on population genetics of animal organisms. He works for Aristotle University in Greece since 2003. He has been member of School of Biology and Aristotle University committees on programs of studies, evaluation, accreditation, Erasmus. Alexandros ECTS stands for, I don't know, and International Mobility and Affairs. Apart from his teaching and research interests, he's also involved in projects that are related to the social responsibility of universities, such as supporting university community pathways for refugees and migrants under Erasmus+, and Inspire Europe initiative to support, promote, and integrate research at risk in Europe that is funded under Horizon 2020. So, Alexandros, we will expect from you now to share with us your experience in forming a section in Greece. And as I asked you, mostly stress on the difficulties. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Svetlana. It's not only the difficulties, it is the sustainability and the hope that when we join forces together among the universities, we can do more than each of us separately. It's a pleasure to be among you. I congratulate you. This is a very important day for Bulgaria, I think. And I would share my screen now, and I will share our experience from Greece. We are neighboring countries. We've known Svetlana for many years, and we're here to help as one of the most recent SAR sections in Europe the past years. So I'm really happy to share with you the experience of Greek universities in forming a section and starting to support Scholars at Risk in a more organized way, because I know that a lot of us really care, well, some of us at least, and I'm sure that right now in Bulgarian universities, there's also a lot of Ukrainian researchers who are at risk and who need support in various ways. Let me state from the start that, of course, this is not a fast process. This is something that needs time, and it needs a lot of stamina and strength from each one of you. but I'm sure that you will feel very happy with the process. As I said, it needs time. We joined, Aristotle University joined SAR 4 or 5 years ago in 2018, and we needed to do a lot of discussions and a lot of meetings with Greek universities and the representatives from time to time. So just like you, we first had this first meeting with representatives from Greek University in Thessaloniki in October in 2018. And then we had another meeting in October 2020. That was a webinar, that was COVID times. So gradually, more universities started joining the SAR network. So after the Ionian University, University of the Aegean, and the University of Thessaly joined the SAR network, we were happy enough to say that we are able now to launch a SAR Greece section. We did this launching in Thessaloniki just less than a year ago. And as Denise said, this is a SAR section where we have a steering committee of 3 universities, and Aristotle University is being the chair for the next 2 years. We're happy to say that more universities have joined the SAR network, another 3 universities, Pandion, University of Crete, and University of Western Macedonia. And I think that I hope that maybe by next year, another 9 Greek universities maybe will join, which will make something like half the Greek universities to be part of the SAR network. How was it established, however? As I said, it's not an easy thing to do. It needs a lot of discussions and a lot of, as I always say, a bottom-up approach. There are possibilities where maybe the rectors would be personally interested. At least in Greece, we had to do a lot of meetings. Apart from the meetings with people, with colleagues like you, we tried to present our causes again and again to the highest levels as possible. So after we had, of course, the support of our rector, we also were able to discuss, to go to the Rector Synod conference where we talked to all the rectors of the Greek universities. We also were able to visit the Deputy Minister of Education. And it was good also for communication purposes that we were really happy to be invited. It was an honor for us to be invited also by the President of the Hellenic Republic, Her Highness Katerina Sakelaropoulou. Of course, this is something that needs, as I said, many meetings again and again, and a lot of communication and a lot of follow-up meetings. And in order also to do that, we need a lot of workshops and seminars, apart from the private meetings or the small meetings like this one that we're doing right now. We were happy to say that we were able to join our causes with larger meetings, either with a workshop that was at the end of the Sucre project, which was a strategic partnership, or through the Inspire Europe project that Denise also said, and Joel can also talk a lot about the Inspire Europe project. So in the process of the workshops that we had in Thessaloniki 2 years ago and this year as well, and as we try to expand our network, we had dedicated discussions about how SAR can help and how SAR sections can also help. As I said, we had representatives from the rectors themselves, but also we had also invited, and we were very happy that the Greek Commissioner Margaritis Chinas did send a welcome speech at our workshop in Thessaloniki in 2020. In the same way, I think maybe at some point, even your commissioner, Maria Gabriel, could be invited into one meetings like that, which would definitely support your cause and create more idea and more communication material for rectors to be interested. There are, of course, it's also very important to disseminate at the Greek level. We have a specific website which is hosted by the Ionian University. We try to do as many press releases as possible. Today, on the occasion of the World Refugee Day, we have already issued a specific press report from our university on that occasion. We also released a press release on the occasion of the launch of the SAR session. And we do give interviews from time to time to general newspapers in order to invite more people and so that more people are aware of what we're doing. The problem is always the funding. This is the funding as regards the scholarship. As Miriam said and Denise said, it's not important. And it was also very difficult for me at first to understand, but the truth is, it's not important from the first that you do have funding for a scholar. This needs time, and this is something that we have been working on for quite a lot of time already. For now, we have some money from within our universities, from the research committees from within our universities, so that's an in-house scholarships for scholars at risk. But again, of course, we already also have to stress that it's not about the funding only to support the scholar. There are also other issues like the visa, the residence permits, and other issues. And this needs a lot of time and effort and cannot be solved just with a scholarship. And this is where we have some experience even from our university, due to the fact that we have already one scholarship that we have given. So we know more or less the problems, and this is the importance of the SAR sections as we share information about what goes good, what goes wrong, how we can help each other, and we're always ready to help here. Funding, as I said, is something very difficult. So it's very important, the fact that when we go and we discuss with the different ministries or with the National Scholarship Foundation, it's not just Aristotle University is talking, but it's the national section. So now that we are a group of 7 universities and more are hopefully are going to join, we can knock on the door of the National Scholarship Foundation. And now we are more or less discussing that maybe if we give some money, then the National Scholarship Foundation is going to give more money. And hopefully we can get at some point a national project where there will be funding for every year for some number of scholarships. And we do plan to continue hunting and chasing that. We hope to go to the next synod conference of the rectors during summer, and we'll go again and talk to the rectors again and tell them about the importance of supporting scholars at risk. And one thing that we're going to discuss with them is something that the Bulgarian commissioner has recently said, that there's going to be money from EU for Ukrainian scholars. So this is something that Joel can say more about that, but such arrangements should be at least publicized in the second half of 2022. This is something that will come within Inspire Europe, though we definitely believe that this is something that should be developed even at the European level. And as we were discussing also with our scholars, with colleagues from Poland, from Jagiellonian University, and we know how much money and how much effort Eastern European universities have given in order to support Ukrainian scholars. This is also something very important for Bulgarian universities as well. The earlier that Bulgarian universities are able to organize themselves, to be able to have some structures, to be able to support scholars at risk, hopefully there will be opportunities for Bulgarian universities as well to support Ukrainian scholars through this funding. Of course, there's other things as well.
Failed to detect your speaker. Добре, явно ще трябва да съм на слушалките.
Sorry?
Please switch off your microphones.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Continue,
Very
please.
quickly, of course, there's other things that we can do and we have organized as well. We have also prepared a specific website as a welcome guide for scholars at risk. This is something, again, that we built not on our own, but we used the help of our German scholars, German colleagues and Italian colleagues who gave us the structure of that website. And again, we can help you in order to build such an analogous site. As I said, and Denise also said, this is some of this has been done through Inspire Europe project, and we are happy to say that we will have money for another 3 years. And in that process, Aristotle University has as one of its main aims to expand the network of supporting scholars at risk in Southeastern Europe. So we hope to be in close contact with Svetlana and with all of you, and hopefully very, very soon with the Bulgaria SAR section as well. And if you need any more information, Svetlana and everyone, we're here to help. This is our email. And of course, I will share this presentation with Svetlana and with all of you.
Thank you very much, Alexandros. And now to invite all of the guests today to ask Alexandros questions if you have something that relates to their experience and their local approach. Please raise hand or type your question in the chat.
Svetlana, if I may, I have to stress, don't lose hope. This is something that needs a lot of time. We have done a lot of meetings, and each time we do another meeting or another webinar, we have more representatives from more universities coming again and again. The last webinar we did through the Inspire Europe project was the most populous, with more than half of Greek universities being part. Some of them already knew, some of them wanted to know more. So it needs a lot of dissemination. And I think the time is right now for a very, very bad cause, for a bad situation, which is the Ukrainian situation. But at least through this bad situation, there is hope for scholars at risk with the collaboration of universities.
Thank you very much, Alexandros. Together with us is our Vice Rector, Associated Professor Eliza Stefanova. So she supports very much our active work up to now, and we really count on our management to support our work in the future too. Also to transfer our experience and knowledge to our colleagues in Bulgaria. What we actually hope that your access network that is very strong in Bulgaria will be the basis for building the SAR section. I mean, we do have very good cooperation up to now, 22 organizations that includes not only universities, but also the Bulgarian Academy of Sciences. So we do hope that based on this strong network, led again by Sofia University, we will be able to do more in scholars at risk. There is a question from Luciana. Has there been any political pressure, backlash against scholars at risk Greece sections or actions or events? For instance, even in press releases. If yes, how did you manage it? This for you, Alexandros.
Yes, I'm trying to think if there has been any backlash against our section. No, I think wherever we have been and wherever we have discussed, it has been met with positive comments from rectors or from colleagues. I never had a bad comment. Okay, sometimes on a very personal level, I hear from time to time, yes, but we don't even have money for the Greek universities. How are we going to find money for scholars at risk? For me, I'm really sad to hear that, although I do understand the bad financial situation of colleagues from Bulgaria and from Greece the past 10 years with economic recession and everything. But on an official level, As I said, we have even been endorsed from the highest possible authorities. And whenever people tell me something like that, I definitely understand. But the truth is that in Greece, in Bulgaria, we are at least not afraid to say the truth. And we're not afraid that we're going to end up in prison, which is the situation with a lot of colleagues. So we have to remember the importance of academic freedom and how we support that as institutes around the world. This is as much as I can say. Maybe Denise or Joel has more information about backlash.
Colleagues, please share if you have something that comes to your mind in this regard.
We haven't had a great deal of, I think there can be concerns around advocacy work sometimes, and that can be politically sensitive. But that's very much up to the section to decide themselves what would be the best approach for them or the best focus for them as a section, if they want to engage in advocacy work. And there may be particular cases that are quite sensitive. And it is, I suppose, we do defer a lot to the sections, and because you know your national landscape best. So while we do share a lot of materials and lots of different things that you can get involved in and lots of different campaigns, it does come down to the section themselves to know their own landscape. We do provide advice as well on many different things, but we haven't received, to my knowledge, and maybe Miriam knows more about this, about particular consequences for undertaking any sort of particular work in relation to SAR's activities, but maybe Miriam has particular examples.
No, I can't think of any particular examples, but one thing I will say is that in some situations, in some countries where the higher leadership at universities have been hesitant to join for, political reasons, or because they can't, explicitly, outwardly support our advocacy work. We've worked with, students' unions or with individual faculty members at those universities. So what I'm trying to get at is that it's not essential that a university officially join as a member and, the highest administration is fully involved, fully supportive. It's not essential for that to happen, for members in that institution to still work with us and for us to still be able to slowly have a presence at that university and in the country as a whole. So that's just to say that, we basically work around the unique situation in any country, in any section, in any even specific campus politics. Yeah.
I can add one or two more thoughts as well, and that has to do with the specific support of specific scholars at risk, which sometimes can be a political choice. So it depends, of course, always on the area that a specific scholar at risk is working on. And sometimes this can create tension from the rectors as regards the specific scholar might be politically against a specific country regime. My advice on that situations is that the decision to support one specific scholar is something that we are always in conversation with the authorities, with the rector authorities. So it's of course a decision of the rector. So before we make as a section a specific decision, this is something that is good to be done after the discussion of specific rectors. As I said, we cannot go on if the rectors are not supporting us, and we're happy to say that we have the support of the rectors. But yes, sometimes this can create some political disagreements. That's why we need to be in continuous discussion with the rectors.
Maybe, Alexandros, in this regard, it would be a good idea if we reach out to the Rectors' Conference in Bulgaria.
I think you would get the most focused communication channel to start a lot of discussion with the universities. The first time we did it, we got a lot of positive comments, which did not translate to immediate actions from the rectors. That's what I say. That's why we want to go again this summer. Hopefully, more rectors will join our causes. But yes, this is I think it's the most focused position to start from.
Okay, thank you very much. And also Bulgarian Academy of Science leaders, maybe this is also a good option to include some discussions with them. Regarding the funding, we were thinking I shared this when we discussed the possible joining of Bulgaria to Scholars at Risk Europe. We intend to reach out to our two ministries, Ministry of Innovation and Growth and Ministry of Education and Science, and also to the only national funding organization for research, that is National Fund for Science, National Science Fund. In this regard, we do have at national level programs for funding of third country researchers, and maybe we will be able to succeed in putting an extra, let's say, condition that one or two of these positions will be reserved for refugee researchers. Another option is to, as you say, to apply for Maria Curie fellowships that are under this huge fund announced by the Commissioner Gabriel. And of course, there are a lot of bilateral agreements between universities that would be also basis for possible funding of scholars at risk, or bilateral country agreements as well. Recently, it was announced a joint program between Bulgaria and Switzerland that will support cooperation between ETH Zurich and Sofia University in STEM specialties for hiring third country researchers. So this is another option to look for settling and welcoming refugee researcher through this cooperation as well. But of course, that's why we are all here today to discuss it with how the academic community in Bulgaria. This is the start of our meetings and events that we will have to promote these activities. And let's wish each other good luck. I see your message in the chat.
Yes, Svetlana.
Yeah, please.
Within Inspire Europe, Aristotle University will try to have a meeting, an online small workshop, as soon as we have more information about how this will run. So hopefully we can invite the participants that are here so that they know how they can apply for the support of MSc and for the Ukrainian scholars. We'll do that July or August, depending. Joel might know more when we can expect a little bit about how this will evolve, the whole application procedure.
Thanks, Alexandros. I'll just say very briefly, recognizing that recognizing the time that the application, in terms of the coordination of that MSc for Ukraine, which will we would anticipate pending approval be done by Inspire Europe. It would probably be closer to August or even end of August than to July. But thank you, Alexandros, for one, being in that space of coordinating that that information meeting and all of the work that you're doing, both at a Europe-wide context and also regionally on that point. And part of this meeting, I think, as you've just said, Svetlana, is to make sure that those who are listening and wanting to be involved are able to continue to engage with this information. So much of the work that we're doing through Inspire Europe is the work of coordination, information sharing, peer best practices, and trying to support each other as we're building up these structures within the national context. And we're continuing to push for European level fellowship as well, because of course the funding is important. Svetlana, you identified so many of those spaces within the Bulgarian context, but the European level is one that we're continuing to push for as well. And this MSc for Ukraine pot of funding, we hope would be a foothold to expand that to a more country agnostic approach. So important for Ukraine, obviously, and we would hope to widen that in time so that we're able to receive our colleagues from other countries who are also in need.
We also intend, Miriam, I see your hand, just a short remark. We always also intend at Euraccess to prepare a series of training for Ukrainian researchers and institutions to apply for this funding. Because we do have a lot of members of Euraccess that are at the same time NCP contact points for Maria Curie program. So they do have an experience on how it works, how it should be prepared, and what is needed to establish the cooperation between the applying researcher and hosting organization for these fellowships. So yeah, this is also an option. And please, colleagues, whoever have a researcher who is interested to apply and you will be willing to host it, just do not hesitate to contact us for further training and contacts. Actually, I do see Maria Curie NCP right now with us. It is also a Euraccess member. Our contact point at Bulgarian Academy of Sciences, Gabi, is with us. So we will cooperate with her on national level for this training. Miriam, please.
Yeah, this is on a much smaller scale, of course, than the Marie Curie Fund. But just since we were talking about funding, a few other things came to mind. One is, I don't know if this will be helpful in Bulgaria, but one example of a sort of unique, creative way that a university was able to get funding is, I think it was Jagiellonian University in Poland that managed to get some funding through the mayor's office. So through, not national level, but local level government. So, it's different in every country, but that maybe is a helpful avenue. And another thing that comes to mind, this is very limited, but Scholars at Risk does have a pilot program called Practitioners at Risk. This is specifically, it's not for academics, it's specifically for, filmmakers or human rights advocates or, journalists who can have a position at a university. So if a university is interested in hosting someone like that, we do match funding to some extent. This is, again, very limited. It's small scale. It's a pilot program, but it's another option just to give you, all the possibilities for funding. That is something that Scholars at Risk is able to provide.
Thank you very much, Miriam. This is a good idea to have in mind, especially in this very complicated and fast-changing situation that it is right now with the Ukrainian researchers. And since most of them are female university teachers or researchers, this is even more important to give a special attention to them in this regard. Thank you very much.
Sorry, I would add that we do have, and Joel might add to this, there is an upcoming workshop at the end of June led by Inspire, and this is to just talk a little bit more about researchers at risk and their inclusion in existing EU fellowship programs, and I'll just share that information in the link, and that will be online.
Okay, thank you very much. I will prepare a pack for all the participants today, also to the invitees that were not able to join us today. And we'll ask also the Ministry of Education and Science, Department of Science, to spread among our universities all of the materials from today's session. And by this, I don't see any other questions, if you have any. By this, I think we can close the today meeting. And thank you very much for joining us and for giving this inspiring presentations.
Thank you very much, and thank you again for hosting us today and for affording SAR this opportunity to meet so many of your colleagues. Just to finish, and to thank you all for attending today, but to let you know that SAR is here to answer any of your questions, and we will be following up with more information about membership and just next steps about how to get involved in even any capacity. And of course, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. We're always here to answer them. And we're just very grateful to meet everyone today and for your time today. And also to extend a thanks to Alexandros, who took time out to again share his knowledge and expertise. And we're very grateful to him, who has spearheaded such a wonderful section in Greece. So thank you very much. And of course, again, to Svetlana, who's leading the way here in Bulgaria and who is laying the foundations for hopefully a section here. Thank you all.
Thank you very much to all, and see you soon at the next event.